everybody, so I wanted to jump back on here and start part 2 of my PCOS story. So we had finished discussing, talking about what happened after I had lost my baby, and I actually lost my horse in that same year. That was actually all back in 2012 when all that happened. I actually figured out what year it was. Sorry about that. But so after I lost my mare, like I said, it kind of brought me back to reality a little bit. Kind of woke me up and made me realize what you can lose if you're not paying attention. So I finally kind of woke up out of my depression and everything. I still grieved the loss of my mare too. It was still really hard, unfortunately, but I was able to kind of move past it and not stay in that depression like I had when I had lost my first baby. So over the next, like I said, 4 to 5 years, I had gotten really seriously injured after falling off that ladder. It had caused bruising on my insides and had caused me to retain excess tissue and stuff, which ended up causing my PCOS to even be worse, and made me caused me to have extremely heavy cycles. And I'm not talking your average cycle. I'm talking like bleeding so heavily you can't go out in public. You will just get it all over yourself, and it was that bad. It was that embarrassing. So I started going to doctors because everyone in my family started getting really worried about me, because I started getting to where I couldn't breathe and catch my breath and all that kind of stuff. So I started going to doctors. I got online and started reading up on my symptoms and all the things that I was experiencing. I mean, I was having, besides just the extremely, heavy blood loss, I was dealing with fatigue. I was dealing with heart palpitations. I was having headaches, which I still deal with headaches even now. I was just having all kind of abnormal, extremely bad pain in my ovaries due to cyst, and it was causing me just to be in pain all the time. And I couldn't pick up anything heavy, or it just would make it so much worse. So I started going to doctors and OBGYNs in my local area, and I went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and it took about 10 doctors to finally see that something really was going on with me. And even then, I wasn't really diagnosed with PCOS at that time. The doctor just noticed that my uterine lining was super thick, and I had polyps that had developed in my uterus. So they actually went in and did my first surgery. This was my first of 3 surgeries. So my first surgery was actually a DNC. They're we were going to try to, me and my husband were still wanting to have kids at the time, and we were still wanting to try, and we were still wanting, to get on a program to kind of help us to try to get pregnant. And so we had my first surgery, and it was a pretty good success. It helped a lot, and my cycles stopped for about, the cycles and the pain and everything that I had dealt with, it stopped for about 6 months. But then following that 6 months, slowly everything started coming back again. So, and then at the same time, I kept going to the OBG. Me and my husband were trying to get pregnant, and we still wanted children. At this point, we had been married about 4 or 5 years at this point. So we were still wanting kids. So I had been dealing with it after that. But after the first loss of my first, I had dealt with the heavy menstrual cycles for about 4 years. Starting off, I dealt with it. I actually dealt with it for about 8 years, but 4 years was the halfway point before my first surgery. And so I went and had my first surgery. And like I said, it was a success for about 6 months, and it worked temporarily. And I actually thought I had gotten to where I was feeling better. I was kind of, back into the game of things. I was still working a full-time job through all of this, just kind of dealing with everything and all this kind of mess. And, sorry y'all, I don't know what's going on with my camera, but I was still dealing with all this and just I mean, it started, my cycles started getting heavier again, and it went right back to where it was. So once again, I started going back to the doctors and kept taking pregnancy tests, hoping I was pregnant. And unfortunately, I never would get a positive pregnancy test. So I just kept going to doctors after doctors. And after about 2 more doctors that I had seen, I finally was diagnosed by a doctor. And here locally, I was finally diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. He kind of wrote down all my symptoms, everything I was dealing with, everything that I had, constantly what I was dealing with. And he's like, yeah, you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And he went in and he's seen all the cysts on my ovaries, y'all. When I tell you this doctor's seen almost 20 something cysts on my ovaries, I kid you not. And he was like, yeah, you've got at least 20 cysts on your ovaries. Some were newer, some were older. And he's like, this is just not normal. And so he decided to take me in and go in, and he checked my uterus again and again. I had had more polyps develop with another thick uterine lining. And this was about 2 years after my previous surgery. So this was about, I want to say this was about 2015, 2016. So again, I went in for surgery. And again, I got cleaned back up again, did a DNC. And well, they're like, well, you should start feeling better. And I did. I immediately started feeling better following that. Like, it worked again. It worked for about 6 months. And I'm like, okay, I hope this doesn't start developing back. And unfortunately, it did. But in between that time, like, before, everything started picking back up with my heavy cycles again, I actually got pregnant again this time. And like I said, this was back, well, at this point it was about 2020 2021, 2022, 2022 when this all happened. Like I said, we had kept on trying to get pregnant and kept on trying to get pregnant, and we finally just we did get I never got a positive pregnancy test, but it was like I started developing and I knew I was pregnant. And we had actually made an appointment with my doctor. We were supposed to go in, but then right when I was only probably about 8 weeks, 2 months long. I wasn't very far along at all. But the reason why I knew I was pregnant, because my heavy menstrual cycles started back up really bad again, and it got to the point that I was bleeding so heavily again. I was so concerned. I wanted to go in and see the doctor so bad, but they couldn't see us any sooner. And I was like, okay. So it was fine. We went in, and before, like, not even a week before I could get in to see the doctor, it was, I'd done bled so much, and it had caused me to lose my second baby. And I actually was at my job when I lost that one. And when I tell you, it was, again, very, very painful. I was at work and I was trying to deal with everything, and again, I was back kind of in denial, trying to deny that I was actually having to deal with it. And I was like, surely. And I went in there. Fortunately, my mom works at the same job. I went in there and talked to her, and I'm like, Mom, I think I just lost another baby. And she's seen how distraught I was over it. And one thing about my mom, she's always been there for me through all this. And like I said, I was at my job, and I was so emotionally distraught, and nobody could really understand, because I don't talk about my feelings a lot to other strange people that I don't know, or people that I even work around. I try to keep most of it to myself. But I lost my second baby, and it was, again, really, really hard on me. But thankfully, I didn't go back into the same depression that I had the first time. I was able to go off by myself for a little bit and really have a long conversation with God, and just like completely cry and break down over everything. which I hadn't been able to do the first time. I kind of drew within myself the first time. The second time I didn't do it, I was actually able just to emotionally just break down over everything. But this is all I'm going to be able to record on part 2. I'll pick up on part 3 next, and I'll kind of break more down what happened following and going into last year, all the way up into last year. All right, guys, talk to you again here soon.